one just right. I have my just right cushion too. All right. Well, good morning.
Morning.
All right. Sunday part 2. When I lead a meditation, that's why I'm already up here, because I'm too lazy to get down and put my knees through it again. So, anyway, so let's just start by really bringing ourselves here in this room. By taking a moment to just bring our attention inward. Kind of sitting up straight and noticing the sensation of the body sitting here. Trying to leave the busyness of getting here and the planning for later. Just setting those aside. It can be helpful to just scan your body to see how it's doing. And this also helps us focus on what we're doing right now. And you can take a moment to just breathe into any spots of tension, trying to relax the face, the shoulders. And taking a few belly breaths. And just letting yourself really feel present in this room, in this moment. Right now, in this moment, you have nothing else to do except notice the breath going in and out of the body. This can be a very useful technique for just resting the mind in times of stress. It's just take a few moments or a few minutes and just follow your breath, the tip of your nose. And take a moment to remember why you came here this morning. And whatever your motivation, try to set an intention to use the time well. It can be as simple as to set the intention to try to pay attention to what's happening here and not letting the mind get too caught up in what came before or what's going to come after. And then we can combine that intention with a wish that it benefit our own minds, and the wish that that benefit ripples out to benefit others around us. And in this way, brings positive energy into our world. And again, bring your attention to your body sitting here. Your awareness that there are others around you. And then gently open your eyes. Shrug our way into awakeness. So let's recite the four measurables, if that's easy to do. It's on page 34 of the Gold Prayer Book. You may need to share a copy, or you can just listen if you forgot your glasses. So the four immeasurables are four immeasurable minds. It's trying to cultivate, or at least think about for a moment, the immeasurable mind of love, the immeasurable mind of compassion, the immeasurable mind of joy, and the immeasurable mind of equanimity. And how wonderful it would be if we were able to actualize these minds. Begin. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable in the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So wishing people happiness is the mind of love. Wishing people to not suffer is the mind of compassion. Wishing people to attain the kind of happiness that is everlasting, that is not temporary, is the immeasurable mind of joy, joy at seeing others happy. And then the immeasurable mind of equanimity is that cultivation of the mind that it wants these things for everyone, regardless of whether we like them or don't like them, whether they help us or don't help us, or, whether we know them or not, just because. Because how wonderful it would be if we all had these things, and how much better the world would be if that was the state we were all in. So we have to start with ourselves. So, if we love everybody except the jerk that just changed lanes in front of us while we're driving, we've forgotten. So, okay. So we've been talking about meditation, different types of meditation. We started this last week. And one of the things I was thinking about, I want to make sure I've been clear on, and since I can never remember anything of, like, what happened an hour ago, so, I want to make sure, because we're talking about mindfulness. So, if I was more mindful. But so mindfulness is currently, really socially, it's part of our culture now. Right? We see lots of books that are about mindfulness. There are a lot of, it's just a term that's used a lot more often than when I started in Buddhism, and so, which isn't now that long ago, like 20 years ago, but it's really, I think with John Kabat-Zinn and his, I can't remember the first book he wrote, but that Harvard mindfulness stress reduction thing. So it's really become quite well known. And it's really useful. Just even, being mindful of the breath for a few minutes can really help us step back from our stress. And so it has a usefulness just like by that. And that's very commonly what they're talking about when you hear about mindfulness just in general in our culture. Is sort of this present moment type focus. But mindfulness as a mental factor is much more talented than that. It isn't just about being more aware of what we're doing in every moment, which we want to do just so we live our lives instead of living the past over and over again and living the future. You can't even do that, but yet we try so hard. So, but mindfulness is this ability to retain something. So like when we set an intention before an activity, what we rely on in order to fulfill that intention is our mental factor of mindfulness to remember it. So it's not enough to set an intention, then we need to remember that's what the intention was. How many times have you been starting to do something, then got distracted, and you kind of go, this is not what I meant to be doing, I meant to be doing this, and then you find something, I don't know, the older I get, the more I will realize, oh yeah, I was starting to clean this, and then all of a sudden I got to doing this, and they're like all these unfinished things in my living space, it's just sort of like, probably because I never wanted to start cleaning something in the first place. So motivation counts. But motivation is different from intention. Motivation is sort of, sometimes it's unconscious, sometimes it's conscious. We're aware of what our motivation really is, but often it's not particularly conscious, and we have to really bring our awareness to our mind to uncover what might be our motivation. But intentions are conscious. They are a decision to do something a certain way, or to do something at all. So, anyway. Is that making sense? So like I mentioned last week, this desire to be happy and not to suffer isn't unique to Buddhism. All religious traditions talk about how to have achieve or attain a happy state, a sort of an everlasting happy state, if we just call it different things. You know, we call it heaven, and often we call it in Buddhism Pure Lands, you know. But in Buddhism, it's really about, you know, the tools, the difference. Well, I don't even know if it's a difference. I only know this school of Buddhism, so I'm just going to stay away from other religions because I don't really know much about them. But so in this tradition, what we're trying to do is recognize that our happiness and suffering are incredibly dependent upon our mind. So it is to our benefit to really get to know our habits of mind so that we can decide which habits of mind are skillful and which are not, and you know, cultivate the ones that are skillful and try to reduce the ones that aren't. So mindfulness can help with that. You know, like, you know, if you set an intention in the morning that I'm going to be attentive to people who are speaking to me, you know, I'm going to listen and not just plan on what I'm going to say next, you know. I'm really going to listen to what they're saying now, and then I'll pause before responding. So we have to remember to do that through the day. And so when we're sitting there looking at our watch or, you know, thinking about something else entirely different than the person talking to us, so then we need to remember, oh, that's right, I want to be attentive. You know, I set the intention to be attentive. So you bring your mind back to whatever they're saying and start listening again, you know, and you don't sweat the fact that you forgot, because that's not what we want to focus on. It doesn't matter that you forgot. What matters is that you remembered. You know, we want to encourage ourselves to remember what we're setting out to do, you know, and when we don't, oh well, you know. You know, if we're expecting perfection at it, we're going to be quite disappointed. So this is because we don't have the habit. This is what developing a habit's all about. It's going, oh, I didn't do that again. And then start again, you know, with no worries. That's how it begins. So mindfulness. So there's a mindfulness that is kind of grounded in the present. You know, like if your object is your own mind, you know, mindfulness of what's going on in your mind is observing what's going on in the mind. You know, but it can also be the mindfulness of remembering your intention. You know? So we need both. You know, we need to be able to do both. I mean, that's part of what cultivating mindfulness is about, is being able to, you know, set an intention to pay more attention to my different states of mind all day long, so that we're always aware of what's going on, whether we listen to our mind or not. I mean, sometimes our minds are doing all sorts of silly stuff, you know, thinking about all sorts of, you know, it could be daydreaming, which is really, you know, which is fine, you know, no problem, but, you know, how many times can you figure out how you'd spend $1 million? So, you know, or what you do if you retired, or what you know, none of that, you know, so it's just kind of wasting time. And then we complain about not having enough time, so we want to look at that. So, you know, but observing, just knowing what's going on helps us recognize the context of which we act. You know, so it may be that we notice that we're impatient when we're nervous, you know, because we're starting to notice the context of when things happen. You know, when we say something that indicates our impatience, you know, when we lose our temper, when we do these things, you know, by being, you know, aware of what's going on in the mind at that time, you might suddenly realize, oh, this happens a lot when I'm worried about something or anxious about something or whatever. So that becomes information you can use. It doesn't mean it just fixes it. There's more effort required. But it's just kind of clues you in. Oh, so that's what's going on. You know, this is helpful information. mindfulness is that ability we have to remember those things. So later in the day, when we have time to sit and think about, well, what was I concerned about? What can I do to, help myself from being reactive when I'm nervous? So this is the thing. It's not about becoming. Mindfulness is not this state of neutrality. It's just awareness. But then we can use what we're observing as information to evaluate what we need. I'm just watching to make sure Brian has enough room. You have enough room?
I do. Thank you so much.
Okay. Good to see you. I was worried with the rain.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, this is that mindfulness part. So,
Which I'm obviously working on.
So in the beginning of developing your mindfulness, we all have mindfulness. What are we usually mindful of?
Self.
Yes. In what characteristic particularly?
What can I get? I. How does this affect me?
How can I stop this? How can I get more of this? How can I stop this? How can I get more of this?
I feel like.
I feel like, yeah.
What are they thinking of me?
Yeah, what are they thinking of me? So we have all these little things going on, and we're very mindful of it. And then, so now what we want to do is see how skillful that is. Is kind of observe, oh man, I spend a lot of time thinking about what other people are thinking about. And we're never going to know what they're thinking about, are we? Until we develop clairvoyance and can read their minds. But the person we can know is ourselves. We can know what our mind is thinking. And that can be very useful. Because if what we're thinking all the time are things that inhibit us from focusing on what we consider most valuable in our lives, by noticing how much time we're spent on conversations in the mind that don't help us get there, can help us find time. Because we can set an intention to choose to think about something else or think differently, to approach it differently. I feel like I'm going in and out. This is like a toy I'm going to break. So, you can see what's going on in my mind. It's a very strange sensation when you're the one talking into it, and you're not near speakers. Yeah, it does. It goes up and down.
Well, it goes up and down out here too.
Yeah, okay. It's not my imagination. Okay. Not that it matters. Okay, so the word that's translated as mindfulness, I love this word. In the Sanskrit, it's S-M-R-T-I. In Pali, it's sati. It's S-A-T-I. So, go figure. I can't speak Sanskrit or Pali or any of these, but SMR. And it comes from the Sanskrit root, SMR. Okay. So, and it means to remember and keep in mind. So it's more than just remembering it. It's being able to hold it. And that's what we want to try to develop, is this skill when we're going through our day. So that we can, like we set an intention. And then we hold that in our mind as we're doing whatever activity it is. And then we set a new intention, and then we can remember that one, but hold it in the mind. So it's more than just the ability to remember it. It's actually the ability to make it present in the mind with whatever we're doing. So it's a lot more. Did you have a question?
I was just wondering if introspection would be related to it.
Introspection is the state of mind that knows when you forgot. So you need, it's like the guard at the door, you know, going, oops, hey, you've forgotten. And that also needs to be cultivated in terms of when we're watching. You know, like, we're already good at introspection when we, like, notice someone else is not giving us something we want. Do we need some help over there? I'm sorry, I'm very easily distracted.
I was moving so I could see you better.
Yeah, I know, we need to stagger the seats. But some of us like them very straight and tidy. So this idea that we need, you know, it's not enough to like set an intention, bring it to mind. We need to notice when we've lost it. And that's what introspection does. You know? And we also need to notice this when, say, you know, like when you're eating. Say someone's trying to develop a more mindful eating habit so they eat things that they are good for them. We're going to pretend that's what it is. So, you know, the introspection helps them know when they're reaching for, you know, that dessert that's just 9,000 grams of sugar, you know, and that's maybe not what you need. So it's, you know, like we're very good at noticing when we don't get something that we want or that we're, you know, getting something we don't want, all that stuff. We're very alert to when the external things are not suiting us. Y'all can come on in. Oh, she's getting chairs. We have helpful people today. Always. So, what we want to try to do is do the same thing with our thoughts. Be aware when the way we're thinking or the direction our thoughts are going or our actions is leading us away from what we want. And this is the much more important what we want than what is usually driving us, which is sensory things. You know, we want it to be warmer, we want it to be colder, we want it to be a prettier day, we want it to be overcast because we're driving for long distances. You know, it's really funny to me that, you know, like, oh, it's a gorgeous day, I'm glad I don't have to drive to New Orleans today because the sun would kill me. You know, I mean, this is ridiculously how we think. You know, we just go on and on and on about, can I make this situation perfect? Even though we know we can't make it perfect. But our thought process is when we start to look at our mind and be aware of what's going on in our mind, an awful lot of it is spin up with the what if mind, or if only mind. You know, trying to kind of like tweak it to where it's just right. You know, the Goldilocks of thinking. You know, we want it to be just right. Instead of looking at what's happening in our mind and going, well, no wonder nothing's just right, because all I'm doing is focusing on what's wrong. Or all I'm focusing on is things that I can't control, like what other people are doing. You know? So we want to, you know, so this is another aspect of mindfulness. It's not just that we're remembering, it's kind of noticing the patterns in our mind, observing them, and then being able to retain that information so you can think about it later. And that's you know, this is why analytical meditation is important. You know, to really look at your own experience of things. So, okay, she's been talking about mindfulness, you know, and so then you kind of look at your mind for 5 seconds, and then you come back and kind of, you know, see what it's telling you. What does my experience tell me? Do I spend a lot of time in the past or the future? Do I, you know, I mean, I don't know what the patterns of mind are. So you need to uncover them for your benefit, you know, to just see, are these skillful habits? And then, like I said, so you need to see the context. You know, are you, you know, like, when you've gotten enough sleep, when you're not worried about getting your children somewhere, or these different things, how do you behave? Where is your mind? Are those good conditions for your mind? Because that can help you, do your best to take those things into account, Because there's a little bit that we can control about our external things, as long as we don't hold on to it, because it may not work out. This is what planning's about, isn't it? You plan, you say, okay, I'm going to schedule that big meeting, on this day because I don't have any other things really big going on, so it'll be a better condition for me. And of course, that day comes and, car breaks down, everything goes wrong. But, that's another story. But the point is that at least we can know what our good conditions are, what our stressful conditions are, and give us some space to act from within, have more wiggle room, so to speak. To be able to go, I need to really pause before I speak, because I'm really uptight right now. And it's okay, whatever it is. If we have a tendency to say, jump to conclusions when we're afraid of being criticized, we need to recognize that as not a good condition and, decide what we'll do with that information. Is that making sense?
So,
Yeah.
Madam Lieutenant, us being aware, are we continuing on that path that we set out for that day? And just about our intentions for the day,
About being aware?
of our ideas.
Yeah, so if and so you might notice that, I'm remembering my intention and I'm actually following through. What's that an occasion for?
Rejoice.
Rejoicing.
Really?
Good for me. It really is. We want to encourage, because this is a good thing. We don't want to just kind of not notice that. And again, we kind of want to look at the context. Is it because I set an intention this morning? Is it because I've been taking my time? You want to kind of look, okay, what helped this happen? So that you can repeat it. Now, I know that when I began this process, it felt like I was becoming more and more self-obsessed. You have to watch all the time. But the good news is you're using this incredible tool we have, which is our awareness. And how fast is your mind? Like how quickly can you get to, your vacation in your mind? Or, that last piece of, lemon meringue pie in your refrigerator. Or, our mind is really, really quick. That's why so many of our habits of mind just seem to come out of nowhere. It's because it's so habituated to it, it's so skilled at it that it just comes. Boom. So we don't have to worry about how much time it takes to become observant. Because once you get the hang of it, it keeps pace. So it's like, okay. It's like when you, just like any other habit, when you start, you have to put lots of extra effort into it. And, you have to keep reminding yourself, oh yeah, that's right, I want to do this. All those things. But when you get a certain element of skill, you won't be having to pay such harsh, it just will be there. You'll just be noticing. And then you have to deal with, oh no, I can't hide from myself kind of sensation. Because you will notice all sorts of habits of mind that aren't particularly attractive. And it's so important to just observe that and perhaps develop a sense of humor, and trust that everybody starts here. We all have habits of mind that are greedy or, yeah.
So, under habits of mind, if there are people who are excessively nervous prone, or even bordering on OCD, and their minds are very untamed, let's say, and their minds are all over
Okay.
the place, to what extent does that affect their
I don't-
effects in their life?
I know how it affects my habits, my nervousness, but I can't speak to somebody else's. We have to observe ourselves. Because the way I respond to my anxiety, my nervousness, might be different than someone else's. It may have a different voice.
I meant more the effects of that on externally. You know, are you affecting the events in your life by having a personality or a nerve?
Again, I think you have to look at your mind. The impact it has is in your mind. This is what I'm talking about, context. You know, if you're, you know, it's like when you're really, really got something big going on, it's taking up all your time and you have to focus on it. Say your partner's in the hospital and there's a lot of things you need to take care of, but of course you're also quite worried. You know, it's like being able to say, okay, that's not helping me right now. Worrying about it is draining me of energy, and I need my energy because I have all these things to do. So, you know, I'm going to keep reminding myself to not spend any time over here going, oh, what if, what if, what if, what if? You know, and that has to, you know, you have to be forceful about it. You have to go, okay, I'm not going there. Come back here and just focus on what you're doing. This is where mindfulness of the present can be so helpful. Of just getting back to the task you're doing and not letting it drift all over the place. And if you haven't practiced that, it can be very frustrating because you can't kind of get your mind to go back to what you're trying to focus on. Fortunately, we all have practice at these things. It's just usually we're focused on something perhaps not particularly nourishing. So, you know, so that's the thing. So yes, there's no question that this is what is part of the distinguishing or the discrimination or discernment between what states of mind are skillful and what states of mind are not. Having the backdrop of anxiety probably doesn't help most of our actions. You know, I know it doesn't make a good driver. It's like you need a little bit of awareness that you're driving around a 3,000-pound weapon so that you, like, pay attention. But if you go a little over that and worry about the fact that you're then you don't drive as well. You know, you're a little too jumpy. So, yeah.
Just to that point, the anxiety, for me, a lot of times the anxiety, I'll find a way to escape from the task at hand that's causing the anxiety, and I'll go somewhere.
If it's what's causing the anxiety.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just because I don't want to do it.
Right.
That, and you speak to that I'll just go somewhere else and going, how did I get here? You know, and trying to come back to it. It's almost like I want a freaking dog collar that zaps me when I go off.
Well, this is what mindfulness is, and introspection. It is that zap. Oh yeah, that's right, wake up. You want to do this, not that. You know, it is like that. Okay, where was I going over here? Okay, yeah, it's, but we all have to look to find out what this context is doing, you know? Because we may not be able to stop the anxiety. You know, if you have generalized anxiety disorder, then you're going to be kind of nervous all the time, you know? But that's just a backdrop. It can become a backdrop, you know, so that you're aware, you know, when it's kind of heightening, you know, that you need extra caution for yourself, extra spaciousness, so that the anxiety isn't so forceful in your life, and in particularly the way you think.
And a little humor can help us to stay focused. I was reading the spiritual master's words, do or do not. There is no try. Yoda from Star Wars.
See, our great masters. All, those of us of a certain age really, you know, practically had his speeches memorized. So, yes.
I was watching something about how we hold emotions in our body from the
Yeah.
past, and the speaker said that 90% of our mind is subconscious and 10% So I would think that that would probably be part of anxiety, the subconscious memories, maybe?
Well, I don't know, and I'm not here to analyze what's the cause of it. Mainly, it's that we're not paying attention to ourselves. The 90% unconscious doesn't have to stay there. The more we can be present, and we don't have to necessarily understand where it's coming from, because a lot of these habits we seem to have been born with. We just have those habits. And what we can do as adults is recognize, oh, that's not helpful. So maybe I want to kind of lessen its grip on my behavior of thinking, speaking, and doing. Somebody had a question?
Do you have any thoughts on how to distinguish what is anxiety, what is intuition?
I don't have a clue what you mean.
I mean that sometimes people have to trust whatever anxiety they have. This is like warning and intuition, and that's productive. And sometimes it's very destructive. And
Right. Yes, and this is a really important point about observing. Is not going from observing to judgment. Because that takes a little more reflection. We have to really look, because like I said, you need a certain amount of anxiety to drive a car well. You know, to be paying attention that, you know, you can get killed here, you can kill someone else here. We need to know that. That's what we have to train teenagers in, so that they just don't think it's a cool thing to learn how to do. You know, but that it has consequences. Same thing with all our different states of mind. Sometimes a certain state of mind is a completely not helpful to the situation you're in. And other times it's a strength. So it's not about judging, you know, or jumping to conclusions about, you know, we have to look. We have to examine it. We have to see if this is just my habit. Anytime I'm trying something new, I have this habit of, you know, anxiety or something. And I need to not worry about that. You know, it might be there, but it's, you know, doesn't say anything about my ability to do something or not do something. You know, sometimes we confuse anxiety and excitement. You know, all these things. So it's not really about, it's about learning about your response to these things, your different states of mind, and seeing if it's helping you be, if it's feeding a reactivity in your life or not. So that, you know, because we want to live our lives, not just react. We want to act, not just react. And our habits of mind feed reactivity. You know, so there's sometimes when our habits of mind are something we really do want to encourage. We want to cultivate that spontaneous feeling of compassion when we see someone suffering. You know, this, you know, when you see your child struggling, that wish for them to be happy, you know, say all of those things. We want those kinds of habits of mind. And it's lovely when we're habituated them to the point where we feel that no matter who it is that's suffering. So it's not like we want to, it's not like all habits of mind are wrong, bad, whatever. We just need to become more informed about the impact they're having on us in our actions of body, speech, and mind. And as far as that, how our states of mind affect the externals, we already have a pretty good idea that how we feel doesn't just stay within us. You know, we tend to, you know, it seeps out. And then that, you know, this is sort of like, you know, we often, it's really easy to see with negative energy because most of us have a, you know, a desire to get away from that. But it's contagious. But so is positive energy. We might be very good at hiding it in our speech and our body language because it's become, you know, something we felt that we needed to hide. You know, but it doesn't mean it's not influencing the way we're thinking, our choice of words, our decisions about to do or not to do, not to try. So what the Buddha's explained in terms of the mind is that the mind is just, it arises in every moment. And in each of those moments, we have choice on how to be driven by that moment of mind. You know, so we can, you know, if that moment contains anger, we can make a choice to not let that influence our speech or our body language. So we may have the habit of responding angrily to certain kinds of conditions, and so habituated to it, it's just there. But we can, by noticing that that's what's there, choose not to speak, or not to roll our eyes, or walk away in a huff, or slam the door, you know, because we don't want to act from a place of anger. And then, when we have time to reflect, that's when we think about what was going on for me that it made me angry. And we really examine, you know, was my pride involved? Was my, you know, self-esteem involved? Was my self-doubt involved? Was my greed involved? You know, try to really look at it and then examine, is it really worth the anger? Is that a good choice? And we try to unlearn this habit. You know, and recognize that anger really hurts me. You know, so we can start reducing the power it has. It may still arise, but we can step back going, I'm not going there. You know, it's there. You know, so you just wait it out. You know, because the mind, states of mind, are impermanent. We can feed it so it keeps arising in the next moment, and the next moment, and the next moment. But if we don't feed it, it passes. Just like craving. Yes?
What can you do? What are some tools like count to 10 or go sit in a corner?
No, it's really good to just wait. To just observe it and notice when it's not present or not as forceful. You know, it's sort of like you just breathe. But it's this observation, you know, and sometimes all you can do, especially when you're learning something new, we've got a labyrinth going on here.
We got a crowd.
We may have to, during that moment when it arises, apply intention not to act. You know, kind of, I'm under the control of my anger, you know, and just don't say anything, you know. I mean, this is how it starts. You have to become determined, you know. Now, not all of our habits are forceful in that way. Some people don't tend to get angry very often. I rejoice in all of you that don't get angry very often. You know, so maybe impatience is something that arises for them often, but they are applying some tools that don't let it grow into anger. But for them, perhaps attachment is much stronger. You know, this desire, oh, I really want my kids to choose this, not that. You know, I really don't want them, you know, to behave that way at this party coming up. You know, whatever. But those might be the strong things that you really have to be careful, you know, in those moments when they're there, not to say anything and not do anything. So it just depends. You have to observe yourself. What are your habits of mind and which ones are causing you the most difficulties because of the consequences. Because there are consequences to our thoughts. because our thoughts are really what drive our actions. Now, there might be 90% of them might be subconscious. What we want to try to do is bring them up a little bit so we can use the information they're providing in order to choose whether to follow it or not, whether it's useful or not, whether it's just some habit you've developed that isn't true at all. You know, we really need to look at why do I even think that's true? Why do I think it's so important to do something this way? What's going on here? You know, it doesn't have to be this way. We may never resolve the mystery. That's not really what's important. It's recognizing that just because it comes up doesn't mean we have to follow. Because that's what not having mindfulness, not having self-awareness and observation, we just get pushed throughout our lives by our habit energies instead of recognizing we don't have to follow them. You know? And that when they arise in their, you know, really formidable place, we have to wait before we act, or we're going to be, you know, following them because they're pushing so strong. It really is, for me, for some of my habits, I really think of it, and I don't, no disrespect to people who have the fact that people get physically killed this way, but, you know, I think of it as a tsunami. You know, like my habit energy is this tsunami coming, and it's just, and so the force to stop it is huge, not to mention, like, overcoming it. So we have to be respectful of how strong our habits of mind can be. So we can have a gentleness with ourselves with all the times we don't succeed in interfering with it. Because it's hard. That's why they're habits. Yes?
I found the book from Pema Chodron, Don't
Don't
Bite the Hook.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's a really good book. I agree. So Pema Chodron is
Don't Bite the Hook.
Pema Chodron is a teacher in the Shambhala tradition, which might be part of Kagyu. I don't know. I can't remember. There are lots of schools, lots of anything. Anyway, and she has lots of books out. She's getting old. Impermanence. So, but she has this one book called Don't Bite the Hook, which is that just a shortened version of No Time to Lose?
Exactly,
Yes.
it's a condensed version of the chapters dealing with anger.
Anger. Okay. So No Time to Lose is Pema Chodron's rendition of Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which are verses when we recite the dedication prayers, it's at the end on Sunday, you know, may all, you know, those come from this text called the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And Pema Chodron has a book called No Time to Lose, where there's a lot of commentary, and it's from a Westerner's point of view, which is always helpful. But she has, so she's taken, the section of it has been made into its own little thing called Don't Bite the Hook. And I can picture the CD back when we had CDs, you know, with like a little goldfish, you know, going up. Well, it's a great one for the car. I mean, it's a great one to listen to because it's, you know, but it talks about, does she use Shimpa in that? Okay, so it talks about and I've forgotten what Shimpa, is it just the afflictions? Okay, thanks. I'm turning to Brian, my expert over there. So, but it's that, you know how I talk about sometimes you have this little sensation of the gut that just like, oh yes, I'm not happy. And if I leave it unchecked, can explode into anger or impatience or whatever, craving perhaps, you know. But getting good at noticing this sensation, you know, because those habits that are subconscious sometimes will speak to us in our bodies. That's where we'll notice it first. It's so habituated that we don't need to think about it. That's why it's in the subconscious, you know, so it just arises. But sometimes we have clues because our body is already reacting. It's getting a little tenser or a little, you know, whatever. And we need to recognize those clues. So this is another benefit of mindfulness, that awareness, because it doesn't just bring your awareness to your mental awareness, it also brings your awareness to your body consciousness, your ear consciousness, your nose, because in Buddhism we talk that the senses are all consciousnesses. So you have the sense object, let's get it wrong. The sense organ, which is our physical capacity to do these things, but then we have the awareness that is what knows what that sense organ is, the information the sense organ is detecting. So when you bring mindfulness, when you're practicing this ability of awareness and trying to cultivate mindfulness, it's all of those things that you are aware of, not just your thoughts. So often it's our body that's giving us a clue that we're not, Goldilocks has not found her perfect, just right. So, and that can be the clue to start being cautious with yourself. Give yourself, step back a little to watch what's going on before you say anything or do anything, because it may be ill-advised. Your habit energy may be leading you in a direction you prefer not to go. Does that make sense? Did you have a question?
I did. I had this like chicken egg thing with thoughts and feelings, using it thoughts versus feelings, thoughts and feelings. So I come to the conclusion that feelings are a result of thoughts, right? That I'm feeling something because of the way I think about something. But then I'm told, well, feelings are feelings, and you should give yourself permission to feel these feelings. As if they
Who's
are
telling you that?
my therapist.
Okay. Yeah, they're so good.
So I get wrapped up in this a little bit, and but I'm inclined to go with the former, right? That it's my thoughts that breed my feelings.
Well, okay. It is sort of chicken or egg, isn't it? So one of the things that is kind of a different point of view from like Western psychology and Buddhist psychology is this idea that about feelings having some sort of importance. That I'm struggling for a word here, but Buddhism would agree that suppressing your feelings doesn't work. Just saying, I'm not going to feel that way, I'm not going to feel that way. Well, you are feeling that way. Who are you kidding? So not seeing reality for what it is not helpful. But we don't have to act from that place. So this is what I'm talking about. So if anger has arisen, it's not going to help a whole lot going, I'm not supposed to feel that way, or, that can be harmful. So it's really about, I'm not going to act from this place. I'm going to control myself to not respond that just because the mind's angry. Because we don't have to follow our mind. Our habit energy pushes us, but we can say no. This is the point of learning how to meditate, of learning how to develop your mindfulness, your introspection, how to be able to not lose the thread of your intention through the day. So, however, we need to understand that so much of what we feel is a storyline we've been feeding, pleasant or unpleasant. So we see something as unpleasant, and then we make a story about it. It's unpleasant because they've insulted me, because they've not validated my whatever. I can just, there's so many ways in which we create a story. So someone says something, and we, it's unpleasant. That's our, first feeling. In Buddhism, that's all your feeling mind does. It notices pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, which is a lot of the day, unless we happen to focus on the negative. But then our mental consciousness takes that feeling of pleasant or unpleasant and makes this huge story about it, This is what the love is blind, infatuation phase of relationships are all about. Ooh, pleasant. And then we inflate the object into some unrealistic, something that doesn't exist at all. No. So we want to be aware. It's like learning how to recognize when you're just being with the feeling and when we're starting to feed it. When we're starting to go along a storyline that's just going to feed this feeling to make it stay there. And to make it somehow really important. Oh, they really discounted me. I have a right to be angry or hurt. That's where we get ourselves into huge trouble. And we can't notice that if we're not paying attention. And we don't realize, like this exchanging things. I don't like to be hurt. I'd rather be angry. So when I'm trying to heal being hurt, and I just keep going to anger, the healing never comes. Because I don't stay with it long enough. So these are the ways in which we need to understand that we need to know. We don't have to be embarrassed about what we learn about ourselves because no one else is in there. It's just you. But we need to really be respectful of all the things that we add to the experience of what's happened. Because that's where we really have a lot of control. We don't have any control over what someone says to us. I mean, we can be a bad condition. We're screaming at someone, they yell back, gee, yes, what? We were a participant. But it doesn't mean we can, we can't control what they say, or they do, or how they walk, or how they look at us, or if they slam the door, or if they just don't even notice us, all those things. We can't control any of that. But we can not feed our stories and make experiences something that they never were. All the evaluating we do, where we go, I know what they were thinking, are lies. We don't know what they were thinking. They are assumptions, they are guesses, sometimes they're probably correct, but they're not the point. The point is you're making up a story to fit the, what you see as the facts. And then you suffer. We do that about things we desire. We make up a story about how great it is, and then we just feed our craving, and then when we can't get it, we get mad or get disappointed. And so we live in this roller coaster of unhappy states of mind, happy states of mind, all dependent on what's happening, what we think is happening out here, our story that we've created, instead of just dealing with this moment. And so that's when we have to take this information back to quiet times to reflect upon it and to realize, oh, do I really think that just because, this person I'm in a relationship with, who I care deeply for, who, I'd like to spend time with, is never going to say something to me that doesn't suit me? Of course they're going to say something to me from time to time. So, let's get rid of that expectation. Is it true that if someone says this about me, that means I'm a bad person? No. We have to argue with ourselves. We have to understand that our belief systems are not always based on anything accurate. So we want to challenge our way of thinking, our assumptions, our jumping to conclusions, and say, is that true? And if we can't know whether or not it's true, it's good to just put it on the shelf. I don't know if that's true, and not go, well, if it is true, and then feed that story, So when you look at your mind, you might see that, these kinds of patterns. Now, it's not like we do this all the time. We do this when we get hooked. You know, most of our day has a lot of neutral things going on. We just take care of business, we do our chores, we, you know, blah, blah, blah. But then somebody, you know, runs a stoplight, you know, and it startles us, and we're hooked.
You know what's really interesting, what I've been observing lately is that, yeah, it seems like everything's cool, right, status quo, but I'm almost in a constant state of self-cherishing, and when that gets disturbed, that's when it's well out of control, and so fast, particularly with my self-regulatory things, like having to do my work, you know, sit at the desk, you know, I get, and then bam, off to the races.
Yeah. Self-cherishing is considered the root of all of this stuff.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's not the root root. The root root is that we grasp for the self. But then that self that we're grasping at, we cherish. And we want to feed its every whim, you know. And we want to make sure it doesn't have any sandpaper. You know. So, you know, good luck with that. Yes, Matt.
So, when we have a negative emotion or something like that, and then we have another side of us that sees it and decides not to act on, like, not to murder somebody or something,
Yeah.
right? Which is the real?
What real? What's real?
That's the question. Who's the real me?
There's no real you. There's no real you. One moment you want to murder someone, the next moment you don't. There is no you. You know, there's just a series of moments and they're impermanent.
Okay, but there's a watcher and then there's a mind. And
No, the watcher is a mind. It's part of that mind. Watching.
So we have multiple minds.
Well, we have parts of minds, don't we? We have this capacity to know, we have this, you know, the consciousness has this ability to know. Okay? And then we have all these states of mind that are bringing our awareness to certain things. So we have a mind of attention, which is zeroing in on something. So we're attentive to that part of whatever the object of mind is. Okay? So in one moment, our object of mind is someone we want to murder. Okay? And then the next moment, our object of mind is the desire not to follow our anger. Okay? And then the next moment of mind is, you know, the conclusion, I'm not going to act on this first moment of mine. You know? So you don't have the mind that wants to murder and the mind that's not going to murder. Well, you might have that at the same time. But in general, you know, that's sequential. You know, those are two different thoughts. And so is the thought, I'm not going to act on that. And then there's the person who goes, you know, yeah, I want to kill you, and they do. So there's a moment of wanting to kill, then there's the moment of actually killing. Then there's the moment of having killed. Does that make them a murderer in the next moment? No. Does it mean we don't punish them? No. It just means that, like, sort of, no one is a murderer. This is one of our faulty habits of thinking, you know, is that we draw these huge conclusions, you know, that this person is that, as opposed to this person, you know, followed whatever their habits of mind, and some of them are incredibly negative. You know, a person who kills in this life has probably been practicing the mind of anger for a long time. And in this life, they don't have any real control over it. And also they may have the conditions. They may have access to guns. They may be male. They may have a society that thinks, you know, men should, you know, show the ways in which they're strong physically. You know, who knows? But the point is, just because you have moments of anger, you are not that. You are not anger. You know, it's just a moment of mind. And all we are is a series of moments of mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also the other side of it, kind of thinking like, you didn't see it that way before, but our mind is like a composite, just like our body. It has different parts.
It's not actually a composite. Our continuum of mind is a composite. I mean, it's a composite in the sense that it's produced in every moment. But we have a tendency to solidify things. So we look at our life as more than just a series of moments. It's sort of like the collection of a series of moments. You know? Well, that collection is just a label given to a whole bunch of moments. So it doesn't have any meaning in and of itself. But we have a tendency to go, that's me. And that's a problem. Because that's fixed, permanent, unchanging. Whereas we're not that. We're constantly changing. We at least have constant condition to change because we arise brand new in every moment, just like the physicists say. And right now, the Buddha says, you know, we start off with just totally out of control due to our habits, due to our self-cherishing, our grasping and thinking the only way to happiness is to get what you want and not get anything that you don't want, you know, and that I'm the center of the universe. And not just me, but mine. So our kids, our partner, until they're not our partner, and then, you know, we don't care. But, you know, I mean, that it's just, you know, our circle of concern is me and mine, and they are that. You know. And this is, you know, this is sort of what they call like reifying something that is really just an impermanent, dependent arising, arises in every moment into a thing. That is permanent. Even things aren't permanent fixed. This is the trouble. There's nothing that is like that. Everything is arising and disintegrating moment to moment. And there's an advantage to remembering that, so that every moment doesn't feel like the most important moment, in the sense of, oh, if this happens, it's a catastrophe. I'll never recover. That's giving too much importance or import to one moment. You know, probably the most important thing we can say about each moment is that, you know, let's notice it. You know, let's be there for it. Because they keep passing by, don't they, those moments. You know, so we want to change our habit of following whatever habit of mind has arisen, to choosing. And that takes becoming very conscious of what's going on in that, all those consciousnesses. And this is doable. You know, we think, oh, how is that possibly doable? Well, you think all the time. You're usually just being very, very observant about everybody else. You know, and very, very observant if you're getting what you want or not getting what you want. You're not just observing what is the context of what's happening right now. What am I thinking? You know, are there clues that, you know, or maybe, or, you know, that I can go, oh, I'm just about to lose it. Or give in to that craving. Do I want to do that? And this takes practice. Because what we do when we now have time to quietly reflect, not when we're in the thick of it, is to go, okay, so that came up for me today and I yelled at somebody, how did I like that result? You know? Really examine it. So what can I do to help myself not yell at somebody, blah, blah, blah. If we have to come up with reasons why we want to change. You know? And we can use all the kind of list that someone else creates, you know, like, oh, good people don't yell at people. But it's probably much more useful to use your own reasons. Because when I yell at people, my relationships suffer. People are nervous around me. They feel like they can't trust how I'll react to things. You know, blah, blah, blah. It hurts my relationships. Or when I'm too clingy, you know, or, you know, crave a certain result. That really, you know, impacts my, you know, so you have to look at whatever side of the coin is happening, you know. Whether it's something you want or something you're pushing away. but we need to examine why we want to do it differently, or we won't be motivated to do it differently. You know, so we need to recognize what's in it for us. You know, I mean, and what's in it for us may just be, I just don't want to be a person that yells at everybody. I don't like people who yell at everybody, so why do I want to be one? You know, it doesn't have to be some elaborate thing. It can just be, you know, I'm always horrified that I'm capable of such a thing. So, you know.
If you're around certain people and you are that way, or you feel that way, is that some karmic kind of connection?
Yeah. But it doesn't mean you can't choose to stop that.
Right.
Yeah. You know. So those are just conditions that happen. You know, but it's recognizing no matter what the conditions are, if we've trained our mind, we have control over how we respond. And that, you know, I mean, that's sort of, you know. So in the meantime, we just, you know, a little bit by little bit, we get better at it. And our suffering becomes less right away. If we don't feed those storylines, if we can go, oh, why am I getting bent out of shape out of here? This is, you know, this is a total stranger. Why do I really take it personally? So it's just looking at your habits. Some are really easy to kind of go, I'm not going to do that. You know, and that just means every time it arises, you go, I'm not going there. And it's not too hard. Others are like the tsunami, where you really have to work hard and going, oh, there I am. Okay, you know, step back, give yourself breathing space. Remember, you don't have to respond. You know, you'll develop little things you can say to appear polite, you know, because you need to. I mean, I've actually told people, now this is living in a nun's community because it's, you know, this is the advantage of having companions, is I'll just go, okay, I can't say anything right now because whatever I'm going to say is going to be totally inappropriate and I don't want to go in that direction. Can you please wait? You know? And then I go, no, not yet. You know? And then finally, I can get through that self-cherishing ego, I must be right mind, you know? And like say something reasonable. You know, just like, but it's, you know, there are times when it's really effortful. And so you have to just not do anything. So sometimes you just need, oh, I have to think about that for a little while. You know, and go off and let that pass. Not suppress it, just because it's impermanent. It will pass. And when we notice it's passed, if we haven't been feeding it, oh, I should have felt like I am justified for that. I like to feel miserable. So, it's all of that. So anyway, say hello to each other before we say goodbye. Oh, we have a question.
One more question.
Yep, sure.
I want to connect to the question about me, and there is a real me, there is no me. We still have to deal with some uniqueness in this life. We have our own signatures, appearance, gifts which we are equipped from birth. So how does it fit into this concept?
It's just not grasping at it as if it's just not a dependent arising. You know, there are reasons why you've got skills, you know, so those skills are resolved. There's nothing to take pride in because it's just what happened, you know. You just happen to have those skills in this life. But it's about not making it this static thing. You know how sometimes when you're aging, there's a part of you that's just like, I can't believe I'm having so much trouble with stairs. You know, I don't have any problems. Why am I having trouble with stairs? Well, that's that holding on to something as static. I am this way. I can do this. And then we have trouble when it's not true. So it's like, you know, we rejoice in the things that we do well, you know, but we don't grasp on to it as that's who I am. Because we're changing every moment.
I think that retirement, for example, is a real crux point for a lot of people in this culture on that. For example, 35 years I was a professor. Well, I'm not a professor anymore. So if I'm still holding on to that, I'm special, somebody should pay attention to me. I'm losing it.
Yeah, and even when you were a professor, you were thinking
Exactly.
that wasn't such a great
Yeah,
skill.
But that is not me. And people say I am my work. I hope not. You know.
Well, I mean, it's just sort of, it's a storyline we keep feeding ourselves. If this isn't the shape of my life, then who am I? And that's really harmful to ourselves. You know, you're a series of moments. And if we look back at our whole life, then we can really see how kind of silly it is to think that we are something. Because we're quite different in different parts of our lives. I was very compassionate as a young person. And I really wasn't as in my 20s. And I had to renew that. So, you know, I mean, it's just a series of moments. So, but we'll talk more about that. That's a big backdrop to Buddhism, is this idea of reifying things as if they are that, you know, and are grasping after it as if it's not changing all the time. It doesn't mean that we just, you know, never grieve, never do, you know, it's just, but it lessens this, you know, these constructs we create that are not valid. So, well, I was going to get you to say hello to each other, but because we're getting close to the end of time, the whole I think there are a few announcements, and then we'll do the dedication prayers, and then hopefully you'll stay 3 seconds longer and introduce yourselves to each other. So,
Discovery Buddhism on Thursday.
okay. So, Discovering Buddhism on Thursday is the last night of spiritual teacher, relying upon a spiritual teacher. Next Sunday before class is a Medicine Buddha Puja, which this is Medicine Buddha. And it's all about saying praises to those beings who really 24/7 wanted to help people in all sorts of different difficult circumstances. Last chance to purchase a $5 raffle ticket for the 16 Guidelines Workshop will be next Sunday. So the 16 Guidelines Workshop is really good to bring your partners to if they don't come. You know, it's a good way to learn about how to act, how to think,
How to relate to others.
how to relate to others, and how to find meaning that are not couched in all this Buddhist jargon. You know, Venerable Robina is going to be here in a week from tomorrow. So she's teaching every night of the week. Is that correct?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's Guru Puja.
Wednesday's Guru Puja, which will be like
Thursday, and then Saturday.
and then Saturday and Sunday. So no Friday night, but Saturday and Sunday. So I'm going to visit my stepmom, so I won't be here for most of it. But I encourage you to come as much as you can, because she's been a nun for like 40 years. But she was a student of Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. She's quite dynamic. She travels the world and teaches. That's all she does. She has no home. She just goes from center to center to center to center to teach. She ran the Liberation Prison Project for quite a long time. She was the editor of Mandala magazine. Was issued maybe even Wisdom Publication. I don't know. That may not be true. But she's a bodhisattva warrior, so that's someone's conclusion. I would agree. Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche likes to say if we had 100 Rabinas, sentient beings wouldn't stand a chance. So she's pretty powerful. She's from Australia.
Bring the boat to Arba.
She's a little softer now that she doesn't have any deadlines now. But she's why I became a nun. She was the second teacher I ever received any teachings from, and went, oh, all right, this is interesting. So good luck. She's worth coming to. So, okay, now I'm distracted. There's nothing else really that has to be said. Okay, there's calendars and flyers, and yes, Marianne.
Do you know when you're going to be here during that week?
The last Sunday, probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Assuming, you know, karma willing, I'll be here.
Karma willing.
So, so now let's take all this good energy, you know, we've done all this hard work of trying to think about things in a different way, learn something new, or at least think about something. We don't have to learn it. We don't have to believe it, but just thinking about things in a different way. So that, according to the teachings on karma, those are positive activities. And so they are going to result in positive things in the future if the conditions ripen. So what we want to do is take what's called merits. Merits just means positive results from, you know, that we've earned from the positive efforts. And no one's assigning these. Karma, the law of cause and effect, is like physics, you know. It's not someone judging anything. It's just, you know, if you do something nice, that's going to result in something nice for you in the future. Unfortunately, it's not instant, so, you know, oh well. So we want to give that away. We want to be generous with any positive results we may have. So 244? 246? And we're trying to have the long view that these positive results will not exhaust until everyone's out of a suffering state. Okay. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain a notion of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weep with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may actually remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So thank you very much, and thank you for your participation. It's always welcome. And please, introduce yourself to each other. So I'm Jane. You know, be friendly.